Hi everybody, how you doing? Maybe I give you a few minutes for people to join. No, okay. So tonight is another live for Detour. If you didn't know, I am out myself and a few other wonderful people will be organizing an event to raise awareness about sex trafficking in Peel. The event is actually coming up really soon. It's actually this coming Friday, June 29th at 7:30 p.m. at Grace Place Community Center. And we're in for a night of, we're going to hear from a keynote from who's a survivor of sex trafficking. There's going to be a panel of experts and opportunities to ask questions and to learn about how prevalent sex trafficking is in Peel. And believe it or not, it is a pretty serious issue. It's my goal to bring awareness. So if you're tuned in already, please just take a moment to stay. We have something very special for you tonight. Tonight we'll have a guest with us. She is not only one of the organizers for this event, but she is also someone who has grown up with sex trafficking in her life. And I'm going to wait for her to join in a bit.
She needs to watch. She's not watching.
Oh, join in a bit to. She's asking to right now. Yes. One second.
Okay, she's here.
Oh, okay. All right. So she's here. So we're gonna have her join to begin to tell us her story.
So Sherri, you keep disappearing from the live. There you go. You've got to be on it for me to invite you. There we go. So I'm gonna give you an invite in just a sec. Continue.
Oh, okay. So she's joining now. So Sherri.
So she can request. Tell her to hit the button to request to join at the bottom of her screen.
So hit the button to request to join Sherri. She's listening. Hit the button to request to join. All right. Woo.
She says, I'm listening.
I'm blind now.
All right, madam. Sorry, guys. We're just working out the technology. So at the bottom, you should be able to request to join, Sherri. There's no request or invite yet.
Yeah, she doesn't see it. It's not working. Tag me. She said tag her again. Let's try. We are now experiencing technical difficulties. Please bear with us.
Yeah, so Sherri, it might be something with your settings because everyone else. There we go. There we go. Yay.
She's in. She's on? Oh.
Here we go.
There we go.
Sorry,
Hi,
guys.
Sherri.
I'm
That's
so
okay.
technically illiterate. I'm so sorry.
No,
No worries.
it's okay. It's okay. We're happy to have you.
Me too. I'm so glad that I had technical difficulties on my end too, so don't worry.
No worries. So, I've already told everybody about Detour, told everyone that we have a special guest, which is you. So I just want to just get right into it and have you begin to tell your story around sex trafficking and why it's so important to you.
I just don't want to ramble on. I really want to stick to the point. But first of all, good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me. Thanks for this conversation. I think it's really, really important. It's very near and dear to my heart because of how I was raised and what I was raised in. And so I'll start by saying one of the reasons why it's so important to me is because my mother was a prostitute. So growing up in the South Bronx of New York City, the South Bronx, um, that's my thing. That's my spot. That's home for me. But in the 70s, now I'm giving my age away. In the 70s, there's a lot of things going on at that time, and my mother, coming from a very small town in Nova Scotia called New Glasgow, a really small town. Shout out to all the Scotians out there, who grew up without her mom for the majority of her life, raised by her father only, who tried his best and did his absolute best in raising her. She went, actually, after growing and having high school, went to Bible college. Believe it or not. She went to Zion Bible Institute in Rhode Island, New York, and went from there and went on to work to different places in church settings, and just found herself in a bad place in her life. And there was a lot of brokenness inside of her. And so myself, my older brother, and my younger brother was raised in a home where there was a lot of drugs, there was a lot of alcohol. My father was a heroin addict as well. And a crazy fact is they met in church. So they both met trying to find God, trying to find their way out of their, I don't want to say misery, but the challenges of their life. But they were really in a lot of despair, if I can say. And so they were looking for God. They were looking for help because they were both raised in Christian homes. So, when we see, people kind of veering to a lifestyle that you would think that they would never go into because they were raised right, being raised right has nothing to do with getting caught up in a lifestyle. So I just want to throw that out there as well. And so for me, growing up, I saw a lot of things that I shouldn't have. I was involved in a lot of things that I shouldn't have been. And it led me down a road for my own self in my teens, in my young preteens and in my teens that I really shouldn't have been in. I shouldn't have been exposed to. I shouldn't have had desires for, but I did. And I had to learn some things the hard way and some things with the grace of God. But yeah, it's a very quick downward spiral if you don't get someone to help you, and if you don't get a lifeline. I'm going to say it that way. So for me, sex trafficking, it being the way it is today, it being so how can I say, just so pervasive and so subtle, so subtle. So it's really not something that is easily detected sometimes. It truly is something that is so under the radar. And that's why for Detour Appeal, for me, it's so important that we sound the alarm,
Yes.
bring the awareness to our churches, to our community, to everyone and anyone that will listen that, hey, it's here. It's here and it's full effect. And it's not, trying to get here. Oh no, it's here. It's in Peel. And it's stealing away our children. It's stealing away our young
So,
men and young women.
I think it's just something so powerful there is that I didn't know your mom was in church, went to Bible college and everything, and I think
Yeah.
that fact definitely highlights the fact that none of us are what's the word I'm looking for, exempt. Just because we go to church, just because there are people in the building, doesn't mean that something like this doesn't touch the people around us and the people that are close to us. So, but I was wondering if you can tell us more about the pathway for your mom to get involved with sex trafficking in the first place.
Yeah. It was a man. It was a man that she was in love with. It was a man that she was in love with and who was on heroin. And it went from one thing to another. It went from just do this for me. And when you're alone and you don't have a strong network of people surrounding you, speaking wisdom in your ear, and you're caught up in emotions, feeling like this man is your life, like he's my life. I don't have anyone else. He's my everything. She'd invested so much time, and she was head over heels. And I want to say it was a simpler time in the 70s, but it wasn't. There was so many things going on. There was, Martin Luther King Jr. and there's so many things going on, Black Panther. So there was a lot at that time, even the love songs back in that day, they said a lot, and so the time and era when people were in love at that time, it was like all or nothing. I'm going to give my all to you. And she really did. She gave her all, and she really did believe in him and believed that he was going to, marry her, and they were going to both get their lives together, and they were going to help each other, and all of that. And then it went from, I need you to do this for me. I need money. And it went from that to he left. And she was a little bit destitute. She needed money on her own. She needed, how am I going to handle my own bills? How am I gonna make ends meet? I'm sorry, guys. I'm trying to find a place for this phone to sit. How am I gonna, make ends meet? How am I gonna get by? And then there were people that were offering, well, do this for me, because I know you do it, right?
Yeah.
And I'll give you this, or I'll help you with this, and I'll pay this bill for you. And it became, almost like a bartering system now, where I'm going to have to do certain things that I don't want to do, but I'm going to have to do because I need certain things. To just live. So it became something where, he started her off on it, and she did it originally with the intent of, I'm just doing this with him, but it's okay because, he's the one I'm in love with. And then when he left her and she was heartbroken, she was at a place of, it can't get any worse than this, and I still need to pay my bills, or else me and my kids are going to be out on the street in New York City in the 70s, where it wasn't safe. Yeah. So I'm going to have to do, it's by any means necessary. I'm going to have to do what I got to do. And so it became something, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but it became something that she just rationalized was the only thing she could do at that point, and really felt like she was doing it for her family.
And I think that's so powerful, because it definitely, I think it humanizes those who are involved in it, right? Like, you don't know the story behind someone actually getting into the sex trade. She had a family to take care of, and that was her motivation.
Yeah.
And I think quite often people will forget that people have to eat. They have basic needs that have to be met.
Yeah.
And if they feel like it's the only means they have to make money, that's what they're gonna do.
Yeah. 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 And that's really how it was for her. It wasn't like, somebody was threatening her family or anything, because she didn't have any family. She didn't have a support system. And so, but that's a lot of times what happens, right? People, young women get isolated to the point where that person who they feel they're in love with is their only support system. Yeah. And now I'm stuck with just depending on this one man or this one person for my everything, for my food, for my clothing, for my everything.
And it's interesting, because it's like she started by being trafficked by this gentleman, right? That she was in love with.
Yeah.
He basically used her to meet his own needs.
He did.
But then she stayed, right? Because she still had physical needs, right? Physical needs. Her children had needs, right? So it's like, even if someone isn't being pimped out or being threatened anymore, if you come to a point in your life where you don't have the job skills, perhaps, or the education, or the self-esteem, or just the mental health and the fortitude to go out and do something different, and bills are due now, children gotta get fed now,
right
you
now.
end up staying in this vicious cycle, right? So who's going to help them out, right? And I think,
Absolutely.
you know, this is one of the reasons why we're trying to raise awareness for the initiative and raise money for this initiative so that we can help
Yeah,
organizations like Arise, like Elizabeth Fry, who help women
absolutely.
exit sex trafficking by giving them other options like job support, like counseling,
Yeah,
a place to stay, shelters, and so
yes,
forth. So they don't so those physical needs can get met, so they don't have to make money by that means of prostitution anymore.
yeah. Yeah, and I really need to say that it's really those wonderful programs that are already there doing that, for those women that are needing that help. It's so important that we support them. It's so important that we don't minimize what their place is in the community, because there are women that are they'll tell you straight up, this is all I have. This is all I know to do. This is the only way we can
Yes.
eat. And so when, and I'm going to
Yes.
say, when you say it's humanizing the actual act, it truly is, because when you're a mother and you have children that are hungry, you're not going to sit back and say,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to feed them. You're going to do whatever you have to do
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that they're fed. And
Yes.
so there's something to be said for
Yes.
desperate times. There's something to be said for a place of
Mm-hmm.
desperation, and not just desperate
Yes.
for being loved or accepted, but desperate to just pay bills and stay with a roof over your head and food in your children's belly, or even in yours, clothes on your back, just the main necessities. So that's what it was for my mom. And I just want to give a shout out to all my family. I know this is a very revealing conversation. A lot of times I don't really get into this conversation just because I really respect my mother. My mother is alive. She has been rehabilitated. She is a loving person, and she's living for Christ, and she's given up that lifestyle a long time ago. So I don't want to speak about her as if she's still in this lifestyle, or she went
Mm-hmm.
down she turned her life around. Praise God. And God really turned her life around, to be honest. So I'm revealing all of these things just because it's really important that people understand that lifestyle, yes, it's hard for the person that's going through, but it's also hard for the children, because yes, you're getting food for us, but then we don't see you for the whole weekend,
Mm.
and
Well,
we're kids.
yeah. And before we continue, I like to thank you so much for being so open and vulnerable
Of course.
with telling the story. It's really really appreciated. And I have all respect for you and your mother for sharing a story like this. And I think another thing I want to highlight
Okay.
too is in the story that you mentioned, highlighting the social isolation. So you mentioned your mom, had left Nova Scotia,
Yeah.
to go to, was it New York? You said
Rhode Island, first of all. New York.
Ro-
So Rhode Island.
yeah. So basically, to go to the States where there's no
Yeah.
family, no friends. All she had was this individual,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
in the absence of a social network, in the absence of people to lean on, in the absence of people to support you and
Yeah.
provide for your needs,
Yes.
she felt she had to turn to that lifestyle to provide, right? And I just want to use that example to emphasize the power of community,
Support
you know,
systems. Yes.
and
Yes.
support systems. Yeah, it's so powerful.
Yeah.
It prevents so much.
Yes. And I think this is
Yeah.
where, as well, the church can stand up, and be
Mm-hmm.
that support system, be that. It doesn't have to just be community agency. It can be, and it should be, I feel, the church lending out, opening
Yes.
their doors, being that place of refuge, saying that you don't have to go through this alone. And it doesn't matter whether or not you have a food program or a benevolent fund. You can just be that person. It could just be,
Mm-hmm.
somebody that they can go to, know that they can be vulnerable with, know that they can talk to, know that they can get encouragement, because you don't know that encouragement and that prayer time or that Bible study that you're inviting them to might just give them that extra push to get them
Yes.
out of that life. And to be honest with you, that's how my mom got out. She,
Yeah.
she was,
Oh, please tell us more about that.
so
About how.
yes. So we had moved here to Canada. You know, my mom just got right back into the lifestyle. She really wanted to get out of New York City to leave that lifestyle. I'll say that was her intention. She wanted to give us a better life, and she wanted to open our eyes up to a different world, because we were living in the South Bronx and it was one kind of world. And then when we came here, it was a whole new world, as they say in Disney. And
Yeah.
yeah, and so when we got to a building, we lived in this building in Toronto, and this lady met my mother and kind of saw how she was with us and trying to, you know, we were struggling, and a lot of times my mother would just leave us downstairs to the superintendent's apartment, because there was a little girl there that liked to play with me, and she would leave me there sometimes for hours, do her business, come back, and this lady saw, you know, how the back and forth and up and down we were all with her, and she could tell that she was struggling. She was struggling. She'd seen her drunk a few times, so she invited her to a prayer meeting that she was having at her apartment. And now let me just back up by saying, even in New York City, my mother brought us to
Yeah.
church every Sunday, almost every Sunday.
Really?
Yes,
Wow.
I grew up in church. I grew up in Church of God of Christ. And my church was Soul Saving Station for Every Nation in Harlem, New York City. It's still there, actually, and thriving from what I understand. And so that church was the church that I grew up with. And so I remember my mother, you know, hung over, going and dragging us to church, and stumbling and, you know, leaning over and throwing up at the curb, wiping her from her mouth and continuing on to church, going downstairs in the basement and people praying over her and she's throwing up. And so I remember the church being a place for me as a child. It was a place of refuge for me. It was a place of, this is a place where I can feel safe and I can feel something. I don't know what it is. They say it's the presence of God. I don't know what it is, but it feels good and it feels safe. And there's always joy here. Like, I could actually feel joy here. I felt loved there. I was taught the word of God. I was taught it through song. I was taught it through scripture. So my foundation, even in the midst of that lifestyle that I was very much affected and exposed to, it was also church. So coming out of New York City and coming to Canada, I was really looking for that place, because that was one of my refuge places. That was a place where I felt safe. And so when this lady, um, who became very much a part of our lives, very much part of our family, actually, when she invited my mother to a prayer meeting, I knew what that meant. I was like, good, people are going to lay hands on mommy and she's going to get saved and something's going to happen. And I just was excited. I was so excited. So I heard her say yes to the lady. And I was like, okay, good. So I knew what day it was going to be. I think it was a Wednesday night. I got my little brother and myself, and we got dressed. I was majority of the time the one that was looking at my little brother, who was 3 years younger than me. And my older brother was always off somewhere trying to do something bad, because we were just neglected. So we just did whatever we wanted to do a lot of times. And he's another story, so that's probably another day. But yeah, it was something where I felt hopeful for the first time in Canada. And I was like, okay, we're going to this prayer meeting. So I got my brother together, and I came outside, and I said, all right, mommy, let's go. And she said, child, where are you going? I said, aren't we going to that prayer meeting that lady told? She said, I just told her that because I didn't want her bothering me anymore. I'm not going to no prayer meeting. And I was literally immediately in tears. Like, I started almost hysterically crying, and I'm like, you have to go. Why aren't you gonna go? We have to go. We have to pray. And she looked at me and she just didn't understand why I was so upset about not going. In my mind, I felt like if we went to that prayer meeting, my mommy would stop dealing the way she was dealing and she would change her life. I really felt
How old were you this time?
I was 10 years old. I was 10 years old.
Wow.
And but I just really, I believed it. I believed that if she went there, that her life was going to change. And this was the hope that I had in God. But that hope that I had in God was planted in me in a very young age, to believe, because I saw that what would happen to people when the people of God would ramble around or just rally around somebody and pray for them. I saw deliverance. I saw people get saved. I saw people changing their lives. So I knew it could happen, and I wanted it to happen for my mother. And so she just said, Sherri, I'm not going to go. I keep on failing, God. I don't want to do this anymore. And I said, you're not going to fail him anymore. I believe in him. You got to just try. And she said to me, I remember this like yesterday. She said, do you believe that if I go to this prayer meeting that God's going to save me and I'm never going to drink anymore? I said, I do. I do believe that. And she said, okay, I'm going to go on your faith. So I said, okay, let's good. That's good enough for me. Let's go. So we went downstairs to the 5th floor. We went to the 5th floor, 504. We went to this lady's apartment. We walked in there, and there was already people in there praying. And I sat over there with my little brother, and I was just like, my hands were clasped, and I was praying so hard. I said, Jesus, please talk to her. Jesus, please talk to her. Please, please, please. And I was just praying so fervently. And then my little brother was like, what are we praying for? I said, shut up. Just pray and say whatever I'm saying. I was just like, just please speak to her, change her, please. I don't want us to go back to the same way. And I just prayed just like how I saw other people pray when I was growing up, just relentless. And I remember I looked over to her, and she was on another couch. I was across the room from her. She was on another couch, and I remember her looking over her shoulder and, looking like to see if she saw somebody behind her. And then she just went back to just going like this. And, other people were praying, but she wasn't really praying. She was just sitting there in the midst of other people praying. And then she looked over again, her shoulder, and she was looking and looking like as if somebody was behind her. And then she fell on her knees. This is the truth. She fell on her knees and she surrendered. She said, yes, Lord, forgive me, please. And she repented. And I promise you, from that day forward, she didn't take another drink of liquor. She literally, it was a miracle before our eyes. She did not touch liquor. She did not go out again. We found a church. We started to go to church faithfully. And my mom was touched by the Lord. When I asked her since that time, and she testifies of this as well, that somebody came behind her and spoke into her ear and said, repent now. Now is the day of salvation. And she looked over her shoulder to say, nobody even knows me here except for this lady. And I know the lady's over here. Who's speaking to me? So she looked over her shoulder to see who else would be bold enough to say something like that to her. And she kept on saying, okay, whatever. And she was just like, I'm just going to stay here for a little while longer, and then I'm going to leave. She had all intentions to leave. And she said this, the voice said again, do you want me to take you and use your children? Today is the day of salvation. Repent now. Yeah. And she said when she looked over her head and saw that there was nobody there, she knew it was the Lord. So she fell on her face before the Lord and gave her heart to God, and she hasn't turned back since. And so she just continued on with the Lord from there. And then that was another journey. It was another journey. Yeah.
Wow, that's so powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh wow. So what did she do like for money after that?
Oh my
and have, like
gosh.
how she survived?
Well, she used the system. She was on what they used to call mother's allowance for a while. And so I will say that one of the I want to say bondages, but one of the downfalls from coming from a life like that is you don't accumulate a lot of skills, and you don't have a lot of confidence in yourself that you yourself can, perhaps even go out into the mainstream and get a job. So she went on what they call Ontario Works today. They used to call it Mother's Allowance back in the day. And so she went on that for a little while, and then she got a little part-time job in a dry cleaner and stuff like that. But my mom normally has just been on the system right now. She's been, and my whole life, I've just known her to be just on the system. And when I say that, I mean the social system where you're given financial assistance by the government. So we lived in what was called Ontario Housing. I don't know what they call it now, Metro Housing. I lived in the jungle. They call it jungle. I lived there. I went to Bathurst Heights, Lawrence Heights, all those schools over there, Flemington Public School. So that's where we grew up, and that's the life that I've known. People might call it hood or ghetto, whatever you want to call it, low income. That's what we've known. And so for her, she was like, I don't care. I'll live on the least I have to live on, but I'm just not going to go back to that lifestyle. And that was a good resolve. But the other side of that was that she was so afraid to go back out into the real world for fear of kind of falling back into those same proclivities, that she kind of stayed to herself and isolated herself into her home and just kind of, threw herself into just trying to be a mom. Um, and that was just, it was another hard time. It was another kind of hard time.
So can we talk about a little bit about you and the impact all of this had on you? Like, what was the greatest impact this whole experience had on you,
Yeah.
and on our mom,
Yeah.
and on your mom?
Yeah. I think honestly, the one of the greatest impacts, I'll say, for my mom has been guilt and letting go of the past. That's been one of the hardest things for her to do, and just being able to forgive herself and move on from from what she missed and what she wasn't able to do as a mother. I think that was one of the hardest things for her, and it still is to this day, to be honest. For me, I'm going to say one of the hardest things, or the most impactful thing for me growing up in that, was truly just having such a distorted view on what sex is for. Not understanding at all what relationships are supposed to be about. Like, just not getting it. Really just looking at men as, you're the enemy. All you're going to do is try to hurt me. All you're going to do is try to manipulate me. All you're going to do is try to use me. So I just really had a very distorted view and understanding of what sex was supposed to be about in my life, how to protect myself. I felt like I had to protect myself from just bad men, not not guarding the gift that I was given in my sexuality, not seeing it from that perspective, but seeing it more from the perspective of, men are bad and they're all going to just use us. So we got to guard ourselves from those bad people. Like, it was a very distorted view. And it led me down to it really led me into a life of promiscuity because I didn't know how to guard myself against that.
Yeah, that's, and you say that, and all I can think about is that whole journey started with one man
Yeah.
objectifying your mother.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And there's one thing I so want to very much want to emphasize with this whole initiative is that men need to stop objectifying women. Because this is the impact and the ripple effect.
Yeah.
It's had on two generations. So your mother and yourself. And
Yeah.
if not for the grace of God, it could have been worse. And not everybody is as blessed to have broken free of this lifestyle as yet.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you is how can the church help?
I think awareness. I think the beginnings has got to be awareness. We've got to start having the conversation. We have to have conversation, first of all, about what God created sex to be. Can we just have that conversation? And its place in marriage. And not just by saying, and by that, let me just be specific, not just saying to young people, wait to have sex, wait to get married to have sex. Not just that. We need to have a deeper conversation about what God created sex for and how beautiful it is in the confines of marriage. But God put it in marriage to protect us, and so that we could have a joyful, pleasurable sexual life with someone that loves us, cares about us, and protects and provides, and having a full experience sexually, as opposed to these bits and pieces of sexual encounters that we have with people that end up harming us and breaking us. So I think having a real honest conversation, whether it be with our youth leaders or I'm not sure how you would do it, maybe a Bible study on it, and just really just breaking it down. So that's one thing, but also being open to understanding that there are young women and men that are out there in this sex trafficking world, and we need to be knowledgeable on how they get recruited. Why? Why is it becoming such an epidemic? Why is
Yeah.
money? I mean, the love of money has always been the root of all evil. It didn't just overnight become some, this epidemic of, oh, these young men, all they want is money, so they're just using women. No, this is going deeper than just a want or a desire of money. I don't even want to go into the spiritual ramifications of it because we'll be here all night. But
Yeah.
the church needs to be more aware and more open to even accepting someone who's been sex trafficked in their church. We look at people
Yes.
sideways when they come into church dressed differently than what we've been taught to dress like.
Yes.
We don't know how to receive. So there's just so many layers, Evon. There's so many layers that we can
Yeah.
talk about in regards to like what the church needs to do. But I think the first, like the foundational thing needs to be, we need to start being open and willing to have a conversation about what's really happening within the lives of our young people. Not just what we want them to experience, but what's really happening.
So just jumping in there. Hey, Sherri,
Hey,
I'm always in the background here.
hey,
So the screen is blowing up right now. So I just want you guys to just know how hot this particular point is. And some of the comments jumping up here is Alan says, now this is big. What did God create sex for? And Agnes says, that this is truly transparent in hopes that, Sherri, your testimony will impact and change the life of someone that is listening. So people are loving this. And I think you guys are hitting the money here around the topic of these are practical ways when we talk about, Alan says very hot, when we talk about how the church can get involved. These are such practical ways, something as simple as our ability or inability at times to receive people just the way they are. And we sing it. Evon was talking the other day about the old school altar calls, and we sing just as I am,
with
and
that, yeah.
we tell people to come just as we are. But yeah, so it seems like people are loving this point. Can you talk a little, you hit something there, Sherri, about the education, conversations about sex, healthy sexuality, and how we can be how the church can be a more welcoming, sincerely a welcoming space. I'd love for you guys to talk a little bit more about those two things.
Can I be honest? Like, even just this conversation, Evon said to me, Sherri, thank you for being open enough to have this conversation. I think it's going to start with being vulnerable. I think we're going to have to start saying, when I was growing up, I had some encounters as well. I understand how it feels to be tempted and fall. I've been there, done that. I think we need to be able to start having those kinds of conversations so the young people don't feel like they're, the aliens. Like, am I crazy to feel this way? Am I dumb? Oh my God, I just got played by somebody. I'm ashamed to even say that I even got played by this guy because I really liked him. So who do I talk to? I can't come to the church and talk to them because they're going to say, well, why did you get involved in the first place? Was he a Christian? Was he I'm not. And it's just honestly and truly, like, we have such a closed view. Forget about whether he's a Christian or not. She's a young woman. She wanted to be desired by a man. She wanted to be loved. She wanted attention. Sometimes she just for me, growing up, when I became a teenager, it was just, can I just get someone to give me some type of acceptance? I was so neglected. I was so rejected. There was so much, even when my mother got saved, God bless her heart, she tried, but she had been so absent for so long. And I had been the mother for the longest time that I was like, child, please, I could take care of you. I was working when I was 12 years old. Oh, I was pretending I was 16. So there was so much dysfunction. We haven't even been able to touch on the dysfunction that happened in my life and led me down the road that I went. But I had to be able to say to somebody, it's not that I like having sex with these guys. I'm just looking for acceptance. I'm looking for love, like a real love that's not going to turn on me later on, or is just using me so that they can get what they want and then dash me to one side later on. I need to be able to have these conversations. So I think it's important that we just start off with vulnerability. Are we going to be able to say, when I was young, this is how I felt, or this is what I went through when my hormones were raging, and maybe even give some tips as to what they did. What did you do? you know, instead of coming across in such a judgmental way, maybe come across it in a little bit more of an accepting way, and don't allow these young people to feel like they're crazy or they're so sinful or nasty minded for thinking or wanting to be desired by the opposite sex. So I
Yeah.
think I think vulnerability is definitely one way of starting the conversation, but being willing to be transparent and be open as well, is going to be a very key thing as well. Because if we're going to try to hide our stuff, then they're not going to ever want to share their stuff. What I do for even a living, I'm a speaker, but I deal with marginalized youth at risk. They call them youth at risk. I don't know why. I think every young person's at risk. There's not just a certain sector that's, you know, at risk. But anyway, it's another conversation. And I remember, you know, I think that one of, not I think, I'm sorry, one of many times young people have said to me, "You're just so comfortable to talk to." And the one thing that sets me apart from other people is because I share my story. I let them know straight up, this is who I am from the beginning. So before I even ask a question, I'm already pouring out my heart and saying, here's my transparent book. I'm opening it for you. Take a page, read it, you know, and know that I'm not any different. I'm no better than you. I've just got a little bit more wisdom. I've lived a little longer, and I'd love to be able to share with you what I've lived so that it may be a blessing to you. And so I think that being able to be transparent is really key.
Sherri, you did an awesome job about talking about some of the messages from as a woman to other young women.
Mm-hmm.
Evon, can you balance out the conversation for us? What is not being said from the pulpits in our youth groups about manhood, about sexuality, that our young men, you know, Sherri talked about the vulnerability, wanting to feel desirable.
Yeah.
I think that's a very female experience.
Yeah.
What was your experience? What's the experience for the guys, and what aren't they hearing? What do they need to be hearing?
I think men need to hear that their conquest of women doesn't make them a man, right? Um, I think that my wife and I have been talking about this over the past few weeks about the messages that I've received and I'm still receiving now about how I should interact with women, and in fact, we were just watching a show, and as this man is describing his conquests, he's saying he hit it, he slapped it, he beat it, he hit it and quit it, and all these things, right? That I'm using all these terminology and words that are objectifying of women. You don't hit a woman, you don't slap a woman, you don't beat it. Those are things you do to balls. You know what I mean? Do to objects or whatever. But like, and as he's saying this, the studio audience is laughing. The woman he's saying it to is laughing and smiling and looking at him. So I'm like, this is our norm, and I think our young men need to hear from the pulpit, need to hear from our mentors and our fathers that this is not cool in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
It is evil, it is sin, and it is having a profound and ugly, disgusting impact on women, right? So imagine now the men that you say you've been with. Imagine one of them stopped and said, "You know what? You don't need to do this." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is not how you get love.
Right.
Why didn't any of those guys stop you and say, "You know what, Sherri, you are more precious than this.
Right.
You're worth more than a one night stand, worth more than sex before marriage, worth more than casual sex or whatever." Why didn't any of them stop you? Why didn't any of them have the self-discipline to say, "No,
Right.
you are a queen, you are loved by God, you are worth a life lived for and worth dying for, and you shouldn't give yourself for anything less"? Why didn't any guy say that to you? Because I think that a lot of this could be prevented if men teach boys to do that. Can you imagine if every time you turn on the TV, if every time you came into contact with a man, that was your experience, and how that would reshape how you thought about yourself and how you conducted yourself sexually out there.
Right.
And that needs to be that needs to be taught and treated very, very seriously.
Right. And so then that's going against what you just said, what we see in media, what we see in the movies, what we hear in music. I mean, it affects so much of, like, what are we feeding? Because whatever we feed grows, right? Whatever we feed, whatever we feed, we actually focus on, and whatever we feed grows. And so when we're always hearing these things like hit it and quit it, and even how women are objectified in music by calling them female dogs. I won't even say the word because it bothers the heck out of me, and then when we hear other women calling other women that, so we're buying into it. So we've got to hear a different conversation, like what you just said. I don't even know when or where. I know certain people who have said it like that and have that perspective, but they don't have a platform where they're saying it. And so I think that someone from a platform who has the ear of men that are influencing when men need to say it. And I really feel like if you don't have a platform, make one.
We need to change the culture. We definitely need to change the culture. 100%. And the culture right now 100%. Doesn't demand that I be something different. And the man that I am today, one that is still striving to respect and honor women the way I should.
Right.
It's not because I was pressured to be that. I had to choose this.
Right.
Because I could have been fine going out there, womanizing and having sex with whomever I want, doing my thing, and experiencing absolutely no social consequences.
Right.
For being something different. I'll be celebrated. And that's the fact for men. And as you speak, I think about some of the music out there we grew up hearing, right?
Yeah.
And it's so ingrained in our culture that it's like happy memories. So I think about songs from Jodeci and some of those R. Kelly and some of those songs that they've sung. A very, very vulgar songs.
But
they sound great. They have a nice beat.
They were
but it's like you remind me of your Jeep, thong for thong thong thong. You know what I mean?
They were
Freak you, like all these things. It's like we have great memories attached to these things. You know what I mean? We had fun, but getting down to the root of it's not healthy.
I don't see nothing wrong with a little bump.
Exactly. I don't see nothing wrong
with
how
long that was playing?
That's what it is. Yes.
And then we hear it and we hear it and we hear it, and it becomes something that we're jamming to, but not just that we're feeding our spirits with. And if we don't have men of valor, men of standard, men of moral character, men of God saying, I'm so sorry. I know it's a nice song, but that's not cool. That's not, you're not going to be able to find a woman that honors you with that kind of attitude. You're going to find some other kind of woman, but even that woman, she's been objectified at some point, and she needs to be respected as well. So you're not going to learn like who's saying these things though. And so I agree with you, Evan. We need to change. We need more Evons. we need more Evons. We need more. We need more to be able to have the courage to say, what needs to be said, and call men out on it as well. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And it's so pervasive. And I even remember when I was younger, I think I was probably 11 or so, and remember staying with my brothers and saying, you know what, when I hit puberty, I'm gonna have sex with this woman or this girl.
Yeah.
And this is how I'm gonna do it. Giving no thought to what she wanted, giving no thought to, like, the thought that she would say no wasn't even in my mind. I expected to go do my thing, and this is what I was trained up to. This is what I grew up seeing.
Wow.
So the music taught me, the TV taught me. It's like, that's what I grew up seeing. So it's definitely.
I mean,
big
that was when you were growing up. Imagine now when there's so much more allowed on TV, there's so much more allowed in movies, there's so much more allowed in music. And let me just say, I'm not against watching TV or music or going to certain movies or whatever, but when that's the only thing that you're feeding your spirit, and you don't hear the counter conversation, you don't hear the other side of that coin, that's all you're hearing, then of course you're going to have that kind of attitude. Like, what else?
Exactly.
What else are you going to come out with? Unless you have someone at home like a Evon that's teaching you what manhood really is, not what society says, or not what your boys say manhood is. So there's just so much. There's just so much. And even when it comes to role models, let me just say, for women, role models. We don't even talk about modesty anymore. I had this really deep conversation with my stylist. I love her. Shout out to Fendi P Styles. And we were talking about, what is modesty? What's God's standard on that? And what does it look like? What is it? A style? Is it, is it a conviction? Does God say something? But we don't even have those kind of conversations anymore, because modesty, what's that? That's not even something we consider anymore when we're getting dressed. And it's just like how we portray even these young girls in middle school. When I go to middle school and I see these young girls trying to look and act grown, I say, why are you in such a rush? And even if you are into a rush of becoming a grown adult, do you think that that's grown adult clothing? Do you think that showing your cleavage, or having a really short skirt, or having tight jeans so your bum is showing, or do you think that is what adulting is? Because it's not. Nor is it classy, nor is it something that's going to get you the right attention.
Exactly.
So that's another thing as well. When we have, Nicki Minaj, I love her. God bless her heart. But, when you've got Cardi B, and you have, other, people out here trying to glorify, well, I just came off the pole and I just got this rap deal and I could just, God bless y'all. But, that lifestyle is very glamorous and sells a lot of money. But that's not necessarily how we're supposed to be. First of all, as Christians, and second of all, just as women. Even if you're not a Christian woman, as a woman, period, there's got to be at some point, this thing called decency, class, respect for yourself. And I know that, respect these days is very relative to the person. It's whatever your truth is on respect. But at the end of the day, I heard this young man say, I understand that you're not a hoe. I think he was talking to Amber, the young lady. She was trying to deal with all of these slut shaming words, and she had this whole campaign going. And I remember somebody interviewing her, and he said, I understand that you're not a hoe, but you're dressing very hoe-ish. So how am I supposed to know? And so just, even though that may be coming, somebody might look at that guy and say, he's very ignorant for saying something like that. He's very disrespectful for saying something like that. But there's some merit to what he's saying, because he's saying, it's not just on me looking at you and your cleavage. I wouldn't look if it wasn't in my face. I wouldn't look there if it wasn't being revealed. And so there's responsibility on both sides. I feel like we as young women as well need to carry ourselves with a lot more respect and love for ourselves, so that we can demand that in relationships.
Exactly. So as we wrap up,
yes,
can you share any final words? I guess any what's the biggest lesson you've learned from your life experience, and that you want to share with our audience right now?
Biggest lesson. Wow, so many. I don't know if there's a biggest one, but I know there's so many. Honestly, it's gonna sound so, very spiritual or cheesy, but have faith in God, I would say, is my biggest lesson. Because as a child, when I would see my mother doing things, and I mean, I'm going to just give you an example just so that you understand how I was in the life. My mother and I shared a bed, and there were times where she had John's in the bed with me, and I was on the other side. She thought I was asleep, but obviously I couldn't be asleep in the midst of that. I had a knife underneath my pillow, to make sure that if that man thinks he's going to come on me, or she falls asleep and, because she's drunk or whatever it is, and then he decides that he's going to do something to me, I'm not going to go out like that. I was like 6 or 7 thinking like this, right? And so that's when I say distortion, just distortion of understanding what sex is, and my guard towards it, or what have you. So Even then, though, I will say that I would pray. And I didn't even understand what I was praying sometimes, but I would pray, God, please protect me. You know, God, please. And I knew that there was a God. I had faith. And when that man didn't touch me, that particular man didn't touch me, I would say, thank you, God. I will say I was raped. I was. Um, there's no way you could be in that type of lifestyle and not. I'm not going to say there's no way. It's most likely that something um, foul. I'm just going to use that word. I'm trying to use my words very carefully. Will happen in that type of lifestyle. You can't grow up in that lifestyle and not be exposed or have something happen to you in some way, shape, or form. And so I have experienced that. I've been able to be healed from that and forgiven that person for that act. But that distorted things as well. Again, but that, even forgiving that person, even getting to a point where I was able to let go of all of this, the distortion that happened in my mind, the perversion that happened in my mind and inevitably my life. It took faith in God. It took me saying, you guys can go. Sorry, guys. It's okay. It took me saying, I'm gonna trust a God that's bigger than me, bigger than my situation. I have to believe that God's going to get me out of here. When I was a kid, I used to think to myself, I don't know how, but I'm not going to live this life. I'm not living this life. And I really believed that God was going to somehow, some way rescue me. I didn't know how he was going to do it. I didn't know how he was going to get me out, but I believed in God. And so I'm going to be honest with you. If there's any lesson that I have learned, it is, there's no way of getting out of that lifestyle just on your own. Yeah. There is no way. On your own, you don't have the strength. You're weakened. Your perspective is perverted, distorted, and controlled at times. You need a supernatural help. And sometimes that supernatural help comes in the form of other people, of a church, of a community agent. It can come in different forms. But it is faith in God that has changed my life. It is being able to believe that what God says in his word is for me. And I've been able to take him at his word. And I've been able to, like, literally just like, yo, you said this in your word. Let me see. Let me see if you're a man of your word. Let me see if you're a God of your word. Let me see if this is true. And he's never disappointed me. I've never been like, oh, you said this in your word, but you didn't do it. That's never been my experience. My experience has always been whatever he said is exactly what he's going to do. And so when he says, whom the Son is set free is free indeed, he means it. When he says that in the presence of the Lord there is liberty, he means it. And so I've been able to experience his freedom, experience liberty. And I've seen many as well in my life experience the same. So I would say my biggest lesson is have faith in God. Have faith in God.
Your story definitely almost brought me to tears. And I thank God for the testimony he's made in your life.
Amen.
And I think it's so powerful, that lesson you just shared. And I thank you for qualifying the faith part, of what it means, because God does work miracles, but having faith in what he said, having faith in the community he set up for you, having faith in who he says you are, having faith in his forgiveness, having faith in his mercy, having faith in the value he's placed upon you. It's and that's the foundation, and just trusting everything that he said to you and about you and everything he will do for you. And yes, I agree. That is a very powerful lesson to share. And I thank you so much. So everybody who's listening to this right now, Dymond will be at Detour. She's one of the panelists on Friday, June 29th.
Come out.
7:30 p.m. Come out. Make sure you're there. help build the awareness. Share this video. Share the Eventbrite. Share the link. Tell a friend. Donate money. Send e-transfers to detourpeel@gmail.com. Message any of us for any details. If you have any questions, if you want to help in any way, please reach out. But in the least, like this video, learn from it,
share it,
and share, and please share
yeah.
it. This is so important. You know, even by doing these videos and sharing these links and the stats on sex trafficking, we've had people reach out to us personally about issues that they've had around sex trafficking.
Yes,
so we're already making an impact. We don't know who in our life is being touched by this stuff. So please, pretty please, in the least, share this knowledge.
And can I just challenge as well one more thing? And
yes,
let's continue the conversation. Let's continue the discussion. Come out June 29th at Grace Place Community Center. It's going to be a great time. We'll have refreshments there. We'll have people that are in this industry that have been affected and that are making it, building an effect themselves in this industry, that is willing to come in and not just say, hey, let's talk about it, but let's talk about it and do something about it, right? So you may think that, oh, I can't do anything about it. Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
Yes,
come out tonight. Share this video, as Evon said. And if there's any other questions, again, my life is an open book. If you want to send some questions my way, feel free, or wait and hold them and come on June 29th and ask me in person.
Definitely.
Yes.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much. And thank you once again, Dymond. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Evon. It's a pleasure. God bless you guys.
You too.
Take care.
We'll talk soon.
Blessings.
Okay, bye.
Bye.